accolades to the group, the committee. Wanted to thank you for your hard work. Appreciate your camaraderie. We kept adding to the three of us that had the idea that we're going to try to put this together. And through the hard work of everyone involved, we've been able to find a great location, have some great food, and friends, and enjoy our friendships, our lifelong friendships. Want to say that I love you all. I love all of you also.
We love you too.
And this isn't really my place to be up here talking about this, because Danny Coffee over here was the catalyst of the group, and Bill was barking orders. So my last order on the group tonight is that I'm responsible for taking back the yearbooks to the lady over at Brebeuf. So that's my mission, and it will be accomplished. All right. Thank you very much. All right, everybody at the bar, can you hear me out there? Come on, guys, shut up out there.
Good job,
Just
Chad.
make sure everybody can hear. This is being zoomed by our good friend Tim Brandt. What's going on? Having every alum that bothered to get on Zoom today. Here we go. The first thing we're doing here is just really, we'll see how this goes, guys, because it's a very spontaneous kind of thing. The invite that we sent out was a matter of, if you have a story you'd like to tell, and apparently there are a few who would like to tell a story. We'll see if it drags on, for 4 hours or something. We'll put a hook and it's over. But, we'll get started and see how it goes. But basically, anybody still who has thought about it or who hasn't and wants to join the microphone just to let us know a story that was important to you while you were at the club, or not important to you, or somebody really didn't like or really disliked, this is the opportunity to do it. And so I have no idea what order we're going in, but I know who's starting this out. My good buddy Tim Kelly has agreed to be the first guy on the microphone. The content of his, the content of what he's about to do, I may or may not have to rebut. Kind of planning on maybe rebutting it, but anyway, I'm gonna let Tim start us off. What's a Frodo?
And untimely.
No, I've been drafted for this by Mr. Coffee, and my opinion and my statements do not represent. I do not have the express written consent of Frodo Nation. So I'm supposed to talk about my experiences of Frodo. I found out that many people in this room didn't know what a Frodo was the entire time they were at Brebeuf. So, but anyway, I want to start out by saying the whole system we had was bad. A through F, all that stuff. If you think about it, what were the advantages? What were the disadvantages? Well, I think they took everybody's entrance test. Some people had a good day, some people had a bad day. And they just divided it into 6.
Get over it.
And I figure, here's what I figured. I think I got one tick above the score to get into the F group, which was a double negative, because the negative part was I think I had inferiority complex, because there was all these really smart people in my class in the F group. Okay, Bob Collins went to Yale. Frank Class went to MIT. Chuck became an astrophysicist and worked for NASA, got a PhD in physics. Don Gentile, Joe Farrell, Mike Yako became anesthesiologist, Buck Beeler, Ed Elliott became radiologist, Gary Maloney became a veterinarian. Mike Vince became a Catholic priest. Anyway, so I felt like these people were, I was sort of intimidated because once again, I think I was like the last guy to get into the F group. But then I got the other part of this. This is where the disadvantage came, was the social part of this. So the F group became known as the geeks, nerds, the people with pocket protectors and slide rules.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually,
I still have several, actually.
The two people, I probably wouldn't have made it through if it hadn't been for Chuck Bauer and a guy named Dave Lazinski, who was in A. So some of my friends were in the A group, and that's probably where I belong. I ended up almost leave, and my brother went to North Central. So I was going to go to North Central, but I didn't. And I'm glad I did. But North Central had two things. North Central had one thing that Brebeuf didn't have, and it didn't have another.
Girls.
And it didn't have Jesuits. So those would have been big advantages in my mind, because I was always, I was no stranger to the jug division or whatever. Okay, so Chuck and Ski sort of kept me going. But the Frodos did bring some of this on themselves. You know, I said, well, we were the geeks and the nerds and the slide rule guys. But I mean, then we had this issue where we got to pick what we studied in literature class. And our teacher first year was Peter McLaughlin. And the high priest of the Lord of the Rings was a fellow named Nick Eastridge. And so we spent an entire semester doing nothing but studying Lord of the Rings. And Nick Eastridge probably read that book 10 times. You could teach it in graduate school. So the protagonist, the main character, was Frodo. So that's how we became Frodos. If anybody. Okay.
What's the protagonist?
That's right. You were a girl.
I was a bee.
So
He acted like that. All the time. I think it's an a-hole. Oh.
So intramurals are always fun. The other intramural teams, is Mr. Frey's here?
Yeah.
Oh, here he is. Mr. Frey. We used to play them in intramural football, and he would mutter on the other side of the line, like kick them in the ball. And various other things about the wonderful Frodo. So we got to deal with stuff like that, but that's okay. Gym class for the Frodos was interesting. We had one fellow that looked like when he ran, I thought he was running in place, but he was actually moving about the speed of a glacier. Okay, and then the Frodos were infiltrated. Here's the worst part. One of our rivals was the famous pretzels. That's the one eliminators, pretzels. They're making various signs over there. Okay, so they sent people up to Frodo's to torture Frodo's and steal Frodo mojo. And I have, you'll think I'm paranoid, but I have proof. I'm going to tell you two stories, and at the end of the two stories, you will know that we were infiltrated by the evil pretzels. Okay, so I was in biology class, and one of these infiltrators, who might be in a black shirt, one of these infiltrators hands me a burlap bag.
Oh, that's not true. It's not true.
All right, you don't have a chance. He hands me a bag.
You picked it up, Tim. You picked it up.
I have
It's gonna be long.
well, everything to do with this bag. Okay, so this bag starts moving. Okay, so I open the bag, and there's a boa constrictor in the bag. And whenever you see you're in close proximity to a boa constrictor, you really don't think, you just reflexively throw it. So I threw the boa constrictor in the bag across the room and it hit the wall or something. And Mr. Zarnowicki, this turned out to be his favorite pet boa constrictor.
He loved that.
Resulting, I've never seen Mr. Zarnowicki. Jim Zarnowicki never got mad, had a mean bone in his body. He was pissed. So I ended up on double secret probation, triple judge status. Thanks to him. Infiltrator. All right, the second one was we had an intramural track meet. And there was a relay, and each person, there was 4 people on the relay, and you ran 200 meters, 220 meters apiece, something, a half a lap around the track. And I was the last leg, and I didn't stretch out properly before athletic events. And we had this nice lead. We were leading. I got the baton, and all I had to do was run a normal race, and we won. But I got a massive cramp in my leg, and I couldn't pull my leg forward, and I went flying on my face on the cinder track. We don't have that real nice track that we have now. It was all cinder track, and everybody sort of gasped. I thought maybe I'd have a seizure or a stroke or something, except one person burst out laughing. Bill Matthews. He burst out laughing. No, everybody else was like wondering if I was like in some medical distress, except him, infiltrated. Now, so I rest my case about being infiltrated and tortured by the said pretzels. Okay, so despite all of this, I do want to say that I'm glad I didn't go to North Central. And if you think back, I mean, I think the Jesuits were pretty mean until the girls arrived at Brebeuf. When the girls arrived at Brebeuf, and some of us visited, we saw students in flip-flops and shorts. And when we went there, it was more like ties and constant jugs and things like that. So the 2 things I do think that Brebeuf did and lived up to their, what we went there for, was that we were really well prepared, and we were all expected to go to college. We were expected to do well in college, and the vast majority of us did. And then and probably the best part was they instilled in us a sense of social responsibility and social justice. And I think that the vast majority of people in this room have lived up to that. Will leave the planet a better place. And that's my Frodo summary for. And in case you noticed, 7-year-old authentic Frodo shirt. We may auction it off. Bidding starts at $10,000.
Now, there's always time for rebuttal. What it was like to be a pretzel versus being a Frodo. So, I have a Frodo. Oh, you do? Come on up there. All right.
I have no idea what it was. So at the last reunion, I was talking to somebody from 1E, and I realized that he had gone to an Ivy League college after graduation, and I said, if you got into that school, your test scores must have been very good, and your GPA must have been very good. And did anybody ever ask you to move up to 2A? It would have been after our freshman year. He said, yeah, they said, you can go up to 2A, but I thought you guys were a bunch of intellectually pretentious pricks. And he knows who he is. The only thing I could say in the moment 20 years after we graduated was, yeah, good choice. So there were some of us who realized what was going on. So I'm supposed to come up with lessons for life. And one of the great Zen masters was Robert Mitchum, the actor, who came to my attention because after he got busted for pot in 1949, he did 90 days in the LA County Jail. And when he came out of the jail, a journalist asked him, what's jail like? And he said, it's kind of like Palm Springs, except there's no river. And his first rule, and my wife and I were talking about what we would teach our child at some point. His first rule was always bring your tools, because you never know when you need them. I learned that at Brebeuf. And then the second rule that we devised for our child was always clap for the band, because they're trying to give you something even if you don't want it. I learned that at Brebeuf. And the third thing that we said to him is, don't be a dick. Which apparently he wasn't listening to. And I learned that at Brebeuf. And every day, in every way, I am grateful for the education I got and for the people I met. They stay with you. And every day I look around and I think I teach students, and I think they did not, most of them, they did not have it as good as we did, because we had people who loved us and held us to account. And that's what it is. Thank you.
I don't mean to steal anybody's thunder here, but at some point, with respect to Dr. Kelly's comments here, somebody has to at least explain a little bit. You want to do it?
I'd like to give the truth.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
It is interesting as you look back. Some people see the truth and some people have versions of the truth. I'm glad that I have eyewitnesses that saw what happened. So, I was in biology class at Aristocrat with Dr. Kelly.
Yeah.
And I knew, because early in the day, the class had brought in a pet snake. I think it was Wayne Griffin's pet snake. It was an anaconda, not a boa constrictor. He's a Frodo. And it wasn't a burlap sack. And it was tied, and a burlap sack had 80 pounds. And I knew it was in the burlap sack. So we're coming into biology class, and I said to Tim, as we're walking in, "Hey, Tim, you think you can pick up that sack? I think it's 80 pounds. He says, "Oh, yeah, I can do that." He walks over, and it's not exactly what he said. He picks it up like this. "No problem." And it goes, and it drops from this part. And then we thought the radiator broke. And then in came Zarnowicki, and the rest of the story is true. That's what happened. The other part, when he ran that race, I don't remember that. But, I've fallen down in a race too, and it's not very funny. So if I did that, I apologize.
I remember.
Oh. Wait a minute. Who invited Teresa to this? All right. So Pat was talking. So 3 things that I learned at Brebeuf. Okay. So not really stories, but lessons. So I was in the 1E group, and I tell this story a lot. So as a freshman, I used to get on the bus at 6:30 in the morning. And I get to Brebeuf at 8, because I grew up on the east side, like 10th and Shadeland, and we drove all through the city to pick up everybody. Then I got to class, and after school, I always stayed for something, whether it was football, basketball, or track. So I never got home till 6:30 or 7. And at the time we went to Brebeuf, you couldn't do homework in anything but pen, and you weren't allowed to carry a pen on during campus. So you had to do 3 hours of homework every night. So I'm 14. I get home 6:37. I study till 10:30, and I was not as quick as certain people. So I studied. Then I get up and do the same thing again. I did so well, I actually hit high honors. They offered me to join, what do they call those? The pretentious pricks, I think. But I knew my parents paid a shitload of money for me to go to this school, and thought, well, maybe I ought to join that group. So I did. So I was a 2A Arab at the time. And then I recognize what I learned is no matter what you do, there's always people that are smarter than you. So I learned that. It didn't take long once I was in that class. The other thing, we used to play intramurals, and during intramurals, you would run on to the gym, you'd shoot a basket, you could hit a basket, you could play, and we'd play for 30, 40 minutes between lunch, and we'd be dripping in sweat. Now, I don't know if you guys remember that, and then you'd be going to class, and what you'd do is you came to your locker, you just change your clothes right in front of the locker. Put your other clothes back on. So the second thing I learned is you don't always need a shower. My wife knows I learned that, but so the third thing, when I think of experiences at Brebeuf, and there's a few people who may remember this, was senior year. So as you guys know, I played football, and we were actually playing in a game, and we were losing 27-16. With about 4 minutes to go in the game. It was actually in Southport. It was in September, and I was in a huddle with several guys in the room. Jay would be one of them, George, Pat, Roy, Jeff, Mike. And we won that game 27-16. We scored 16 unanswered points. You can read about it and, you know, the highlights. I think it's actually in the yearbook. But from that experience, being with 11 guys and almost all of them being seniors, I've never been part of anything. And I don't know, it was what Roy said that I knew in those last 2 minutes, we were not going to lose. And it was just an experience. It was just like, we were going to score 2 touchdowns, we were going to win a game. And it was just known to be true, and it happened. So the learning from that is sometimes it takes more than yourself, and it takes a team. So with that, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm gonna get around to my story here at all, because I think you're gonna interrupt with another really great story. But if anybody has something at the moment, if not, I'm gonna do my one eliminator versus the product. Are you ready, Jay?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. I'll be back.
I want to bring a completely different perspective.
I was a B.
Now, I tried to explain to my wife the A through F thing. And it's like, okay, I said the F's were the really smart guys. And she goes, no, F's failing. F is the smart guys. The A's were the dumb guys. I was a B. She said, well, I figured that out, but I don't get the A and F thing. I said, well, the E's were the cool guys. They were the guys that were smart, and then they were also popular. I said, I wasn't in that group either. And she agreed with that as well. And there was one thing for sure, I was never asked to move to the front. They were just happy I got out. I think, how many we have, 151 in our class? I was 150. Wayne Griffin was 151. We hung out together. The next thing was, I didn't even want to go to Brebeuf. I lived in Fishers, and I would have been in the first Hamilton Southeastern class. And I was I was a great junior high athlete, and everybody wanted me to stay. As a matter of fact, the neighbors got pissed at my parents because my mother made me go to Brebeuf. Here I am, a country boy. I'm going to an all-boys Catholic school, and I had to wear a tie every day. I didn't know what a tie was. And so I get there, and all you guys that were part of the athletic teams, you all played together or played against one another, Roy and Bill and everybody. You know, and I was like this big, goofy outsider, and I hated it. I hated it the first 2 years. I tried to get out. Matter of fact, it's the only test in the world I ever tried to flunk was the entrance exam. And I passed the damn thing. And my parents were so happy I just passed. It's like, really? And it took me 2 years, and finally one of our coaches, Jack Baker, took an interest in me and supported me. And then he left. But he gave me confidence that I could play with these guys that were so much better than I was. And I looked up to all I really did. To all you guys that were in my class even. And they finally accepted me. But here's the great thing. I finally realized, because I'm a slow learner, that's why I was a B, that this was the best thing my parents could have done for me. Because had everybody that I grew up with, none of them got the opportunity to go to college. Because I went to Brebeuf and we had excellent athletes, we got a lot of publicity. I was able to get a scholarship. I couldn't have gone to college without it. We didn't have any money. Matter of fact, we had 12 years of grants in Brebeuf, one right after the other. And it took years after that for my parents to pay off that tuition. But they finally did. And I talked to my brother today. And Brother Sheehy called my dad years after my last brother left and asked him, my dad was a brick mason, and asked him to brick the sign out in the front. And he did that. And they forgave the rest of the tuition. So Brebeuf, in a roundabout way, gave me the opportunity to go to college and get a degree. And I met my wife in college, and after, you know, she kicked me out. We got back together later. That's another story she'll have to tell you. Part of my brain release. But my point is this, is that, you know, I left and went other places, haven't lived back here since I graduated in '71. But even though I only keep in touch with a couple guys, when you come back and you get together, there's this reunification that you have. And you meet people, you talk to people, even if you weren't in that class or that area, there's still that camaraderie that we all hold. So, you know, mom and dad are dead. God bless them for having that courage and putting up with my crap and my awful stinky attitude and hatefulness, because I hated that place for 2 years. That gave me the ability to do the things I did today. And all those things and I'm sure the people talk about, the perseverance and the dedication and the things we learned all came from Brebeuf. No matter what happened. So, wonderful experience. So thank you.
My turn, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so at some point, I could tell you what life against Kelly was like while we were 1E versus Frodo's. Anybody else? Well, I'll do this quick. Ted and I rode a bus at the age of 14 from what would you call it? Far East Side, Little Flower. We grew up in Little Flower. So, you know, Bill and Roy and George and Jerry, they all were one really classy parish away from us over the Holy Spirit. So we all had this like East Side bond. It was pretty cool. But at 14, you're getting on the bus, you know, at 6:30 in the morning, you're riding for an hour and a half. And your dad was like, yeah, you're going to Brebeuf, whether you like it or not. I didn't understand it all. My brother had preceded me there by 2 years. So he was having an okay time. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. And you don't know until you get there what it's like. But once you're there, I mean, honest to God, I am so delighted I didn't go to another school. I mean, we could have walked to Cecina. We lived 5 minutes from Cecina. And Dad was like, no, you're going to Brebeuf. So anyhow, I get there, and Tim's right, Bill's right. You take the test to get in, which is kind of a bizarre way to categorize people for a year or two, or however. But however you did on that test is where you ended up that first year. So, you know, 1F was Frodo's, 1E was the Eliminators, believe it or not. And then Mary Kay's Raiders were like one level below. But like Bill was saying, and this happened with Jerry, Roy, Bill, and me. We did well enough that first semester that they invited us to go up to be a Frodo. I'm trying to tell my dad, there's absolutely no way in God's freaking green earth I'm gonna be a Frodo. That's like, yes, you are. We're paying for Brebeuf. It's a great school. You're gonna get the absolute most out of it. First time ever in my life, I really told him that's not gonna happen. I mean, you gotta wear beanies with little spinners up top. If you don't have a pocket protector every day and you're kicked out, you don't have to just have a slide rule. You gotta have a holster for it. You know, to be a Frodo. And I'm like, that's not happening, Dad. He's like, yes, it is. Somehow, I don't know who set up the meeting, but Peggy, I think, was the president or principal at the time. He brings my ass into a meeting, and my dad was there. Dad didn't even tell me he was going to be there for this meeting. So Cagney is trying to tell me, look, you know, you got a great chance to go up to 1F and, you know, really get the most out of school and all that. I'm trying to tell Cagney even, it's like, do you know what it's like to be a freaking Frodo? It's not just socially enough, it's scary. So by the end of that meeting, Cagney is saying to my dad, he's still purple with the idea that I might not go up to Frodo. You know, Cagney is telling my old man, I really don't think he wants to go up. And honest to God, I mean, and I don't, we got a lot of Frodos here, so I don't mean to be offensive, but when Tim says he might have been the dumbest guy in class, I would have redefined the dumbest guy in class. And I knew that. So it's like, why in the world would I consent to, you know, for 4 years do that? So we had a ball as the, you know, not intellectually snobby, brilliant guys. I don't regret doing what we did. I loved my time at Brebeuf. It was unbelievable. And to echo some of the comments from whatever you guys said, you know, we're so lucky. I mean, we came from all over the city. There were guys that you would have never met in your life. Kelly and I, just for a second, I'll tell this part out. I didn't know Tim at Brebeuf at all, which is amazing because we're there for 4 years. You think you're going to get to know most of the guys in the class. I didn't do Frodo things, so I didn't hang with too many Frodos. I do really do much with any of the, with Tim at least. You know, we go to Regis the first year of college. I didn't know him from Adam. The second or third day we're there, Tim says, hey, let's go over to the Regis Pub where you can buy whatever what was it, beer? 3-2 beer. 3-2 beer. So we probably had, I don't know, God knows how many pitchers freaking 3-2 beer. And Tim starts kicking into what it was like to be a Frodo versus what it was like to be a Lundy Eliminator. He has this stick he does about if you were really like a pretzel. Pretzel was like junior, senior year. So if you were a pretzel, you would attach a 6-pack of beer to the side of your belt. You take the first one off and have the rest of the 6-pack attached to your belt. That was like a qualifying thing in Tim's mind for being a 1E eliminator. Frodos had no idea what, you know, drinking beer was all about. They were building dams and smoking weed out of the and so we could go on and on about the difference between the two, but one way or another, everybody that's here knows what that was like in terms of their own growth. It was a wonderful place to be, and we're delighted that this many people still came out to acknowledge that. I'd like to see more even, but it was wonderful. To have that experience would not change a day of it. So I know there's others who want to say a few things. Jerry, I think, wants to say something. I know there's others. So anybody who wants to come forward, let us know. Oh, wait a minute. There was one more thing I want to say. I remember telling Tim one of the things that the other reason I really wasn't sure I wanted to be a Frodo was you have to take classes from like at Morgan, and you had to take chemistry, and you had to take physics. But I said I really didn't want to take English with Jim Gavin. I can't believe that I was able to avoid Jim Gavin, but had I become a Frodo, I would have been in his class. So thank you.
Thank God, man.
Story, right? Do it.
Yeah. Oh, Johnson. Hey.
I'm going to make this as short as I can. There are three teachers here tonight I'm one of them, Jim Gavin's another, and Wayne Munson. Where are you, Wayne? There you are. Now, Wayne, how many years were you at Brebeuf?
Oh, 3 minutes.
Three? Three. I was there.
And then went on to Regis College.
Right, okay, so I was there 7, Jim was there 12.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he's the senior teacher. Jim was in English, I was in English, Wayne was in speech. And had basketball, varsity basketball.
Football, intramural, and I worked with the Jesuits. They took the vow of poverty, but if you work for them, you live it.
That's right. And Wayne and Jim lived in a house that was owned by the Jesuits, which was next to the property.
Sure.
And I remember one time, real quickly, talking to Wayne. Wayne and I have seen each other a few times at coffees because we both live in the city here in Indianapolis. And we were sharing stories once in a while. I said, Wayne, I said, how was it like living over there in the house? And I remember going over there a few times, but Wayne always beat my ass in table tennis. I thought it was pretty good, but I was nowhere close to what he could play. And so Wayne said, well, he said, it's been pretty nice. And he said, Father Schmidt came over there one time and was walking by the back of the house and sort of stopped and Wayne saw him outside. And he said, Father, how are you? He said, yeah, good. I said, well, what are you doing? Can I help you with anything? He said, well, Wayne, I was just going to mention to you that we've been hearing reports of a lot of noise coming over there from the house. And I think they probably some female visitors over there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a Jesuit problem. Right? And so I think what you told me, Wayne, was you said, well, Father, we're adults here and we really don't need any chaperone. And I said, because Wayne, I like Wayne because he's pretty direct. And I said, well, what happened after that? He said, well, I never heard anything again. So that was interesting. But I started at Brebeuf in '68. What year did you start, Jim?
65.
And Wayne?
Wow.
66.
66. So 65, 66, 68. Well, I got there on a fluke because I wasn't interested in teaching. I just was in Indiana State and I was a Shortridge High School graduate and was married. And my counselor said, why don't you get an interview at Brebeuf because that's your hometown and you're a Latin major. And there aren't many jobs in Latin. I said, okay, well, that makes sense. So I did. And Father Cagney, remember Father Cagney?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was like James Cagney. Like James, fiery, just a short guy, really enthusiastic. So I had an interview with him, and we talked about, my college career and so forth. And I said, well, Father, I'm going to start my master's. I think he said, well, tell me about did you play any sports? Yeah, I played sports in high school. I played in college, but I wasn't that good. He said, what did you play? I said, I played football. He goes, football. That was the magic word. That got me the job. He wanted a freshman football coach. And I said, Father, look, I played in high school. I didn't play after that. I don't know much. Oh, you can do this. You can do this. So I ended up taking the job because of that. God bless him. That was the best thing I ever did.
Yeah. Well.
We just came around. We came from all over the place. We had no feeder system. We had to make things work and gel together. And I was so astonished when I came there of Jay's class, of the sophomore class. They were so talented. Mike Petrus. I mean, all you guys. I was just blown away by how talented you guys were and how much fun you were having. I know you said your first 2 years weren't that good, but I tell you what, from what I saw, I was really admirable. And as a teacher, yeah, I taught things. But I tell you what, you taught me more.
All right. So anybody, George, you were thinking earlier, you might want to say something? Sure. Okay. All right. George Hill. George Elks, ladies and gentlemen.
So it's hard to add anything new to what's been covered in terms of going to the past. And I'm not one to look backwards. I tend to look forward. But I do want to share the sentiment that there's something that's special about the bonds that all of us have that date back to Brebeuf. And I was probably as immature as anyone in this room at that point in time. Maybe that's why I don't want to go back and share any of the stories that I'm responsible for. But of all the schools I've attended and all the places I've been, I've never felt the kind of bond connection that I have to the school, and that comes from the people that I went to school there. The school is just a structure; it's the people that populated the place that made it special, and I think it's instructive that we're able to get as many people from all around the country to show up at these places, show up at this place and listen to stories we have to tell and share the camaraderie. So I hope we get to do it again. You know, as we get older, that becomes less and less likely.
We all do.
But again, it's good to see everybody. Thanks for coming and thank you for sharing all of this.
I'm not about to cut anybody off who'd like to say anything. Jerry, you said you earlier, Mike, were you interested or not? No, okay. Here we go. Caleb, let's go.
Hello, everybody. I don't have any really prepared remarks to say, but I thought I'd say something being the diverse member of the Brebeuf family. I was first introduced to Brebeuf in grade school, and I was convinced by my teachers at St. Rita to attend a summer school program at Brebeuf. And I chose as my summer school program a physical science class. Later to find that physical science class that I took in 8th grade was being taught as a junior or senior class at IPS. And I remember to this day the examination for that physical science class. My teacher, I don't remember his name at the time, but he handed me a vial, a Pyrex vial, and it had all sorts of different things mixed in that vial. It says, we want you to apply what we taught you, and I want you to analyze that vial, and I want you to separate all of those elements in that vial back to their original presence. And in my vial was ink, water, isopropyl alcohol, sugar, and salt, and carbon. And so I was saying, like, man, this is something. So I started thinking and preparing, and right at that particular point in time, there was a small explosion that happened at the table down from me. And we were on a tiny thing, so I had to go ahead and start doing my analyzation. So I set up my fractional distillation tubes and started recording the temperatures. Oh my gosh, this water's boiling off, or the isopropyl boiled off. I'm collecting in the tubes. So long story short is, at the end of that experience, I had a test tube of isopropyl alcohol, one of water, a petri dish of carbon, a vial of ink, a container of sodium, and a container of salt. So that's, the foundation of Brebeuf. So I knew that we had something special, and I had a slide rule, but I didn't have it because I had a little bit of game, like quickly found out that game didn't work for them girls over at Ladywood. Ladywood provided our cheerleaders, and that was a lofty goal at that particular point in time. But But that was a great experience. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I had people that I've seen today that I have not seen in 50 years. I had somebody come up to me a few weeks ago, and this is kind of gives you an idea of what your presence does to people that you don't even know. But I mentioned that I was going to the Brebeuf 50-year reunion. And they says, well, if you go there, could you mention to this guy by the name of Tim Kelly? He used to teach us, tutor us in math at St. Rita. And he said he was a great guy. We played basketball. We had a great fun time. So Tim,
Yeah.
your presence was
Yeah.
felt. And, I was just telling some of the folks at my table that some of the rules, you know, the pin rule, the 2 finger above your ear rule. They didn't think that out far enough, because I had a Jermaine Jackson afro, and the 2 fingers fit easily over there. But I was way up there. And that was part of your game. That was part of my game. And people came up to me and they said, man, I thought you were so much taller back then. Yeah, I was. I was like, when I got out of school, I put the platform shoes on and I had the fro. I was about 6'6" back then. Less than 6 feet. At any rate, I didn't walk with you guys, but I went to Brebeuf for over 2.5 years. Learned things that were so essential in my life. I was the class of 91C. If you look in your 68 yearbook, you look on the inside cover, there's a pep rally seat. And there's 2 little black spots in there. One of them was me, and that was my friend Johnny Wisdom. And you mentioned you mentioned Dave Lazinski. We became best of friends, and Dave passed away a couple 3 years ago, but was a super guy. But any rate, it's great seeing all of you. And I think we can all agree that despite the things that happened to us at Brebeuf, the Father Darcy and the ruler, and the term paper with the 1.5-inch margin left, inch right, 1 top, 1 bottom. Father Darcy slapped the ruler on the paper. Let's go, Walter. And if it didn't pass the muster, he ripped it in half, gave it back to you, said, on my desk tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Have a nice evening.
All right, last call for a minute. Anybody?
Come on.
Sprout?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So we've heard enough of the emotional stuff. This is just one of those things that happened one day. Freshman, good friend Joe Hagee, is he usually here still? Joe's here. Wiry little athletic dude freshman year. This is a Ralph Pale story. Ralph Pale. He was a typing instructor, which is hard to believe, football coach, and also gym teacher. And the first day or two, you go through these tests that test your physical abilities. Push-ups, running, chin-ups. Well, first guy gets up there. I'm not sure I can do one today, but first couple guys struggle, and then Joe Hagee jumps up, rips off 1, 2, 3. Pales looks over, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Starting to swing them legs. 9, 10, 11. That's what I'm talking about, boys. 12, 13. Right in Pales' face. Now that's cutting it out, boys.
I'm so happy to see Coach Wayne Munson here. I got a couple of stories about him. I had the opportunity to say hello, but hello, my teacher and my good friend. I was a young punk freshman. I was an A assassin. I had no idea that the photo and pretzel stuff was going on. I mean, matter of fact, I carried pencils both home and to school, so I never got my homework done, you know. So I go out for the football team, and I go through and I hang with the Eagles, that they fly with Eagles. It's been a week, and that Saturday, you guys remember Hell Week? It was from like Tuesday to Sunday or Saturday. And I was able to go through and, you know, the coaches liked me and said I had a future. And so that Saturday, I got braces on. And my mom, as she's walking out the door, she says, you know, if your son had braces on to the doc, would you let him play football? He says, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would not let him play. So I didn't think much about it until Sunday night, and then my mom asked me, "Well, are you going to play you know, football tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, how are you getting home?" I said, "I don't know. I'll find a way." And she said, "Well, you know, we can't support you." And it was because of her background. She grew up in South Bend, where all these Notre Dame football players are always walking around in plaster, you know, cast. Anyway, I was an okay athlete, but coach was able to see that in me, that I had a little potential. So when I wasn't playing, playing football or running cross country, he would bring us in and we would play basketball, and he seemed like he liked me there too. So one time, we had just got out of gym class and we were doing a lot of weightlifting. And it was one of the times, very rare times, that we would shoot from the outside. And so I had been doing heavy lifts and max lifts, you know, and I was all stretched out and sore. And I got up there and I took a shot, you know, right after Mike Fink's brother, what was his name? Denny Hill hits this, you know, rainbow shot. And I take a shot and it goes like, you know, off about 8 feet that way and bounces into the stands. And he looks at me like, "Santa, what's up?" I said, "Oh, coach, you know, I didn't have much talent, but," I said, "you know, we've been lifting weights and I can't make that shot." And I tried it 3 or 4 more times. And he just basically told me to go sit down over there after that. But he did give me an opportunity later on to play on the JV team. And I had more splinters in my hind end off the bench, but I certainly enjoyed it. And then the last thing that I remember, it was I was learning how to speak in public through our speech program. And that morning, for some reason, it was dark when I got my clothes on, and I had wrong colored socks on, opposite socks. And I was so proud of myself, the way I look at myself. And so, you know, I'm walking around that all day thinking, "Oh, what am I gonna do? I gotta give a speech today." So I stood up on the podium, said what I needed to say, felt pretty strong about what I had to say. And I finished, and he calls me over, and after he would speak, he would go to everyone and tell them, kind of critique them. "You should have done this, you could have done that." He says, "And by the way, stand on 2 feet when you're addressing the crowd." That's really all I have to say about it. So thank you, coach. You did it again for me. Okay? We're almost done. Okay, not to grow, we promised it wouldn't be forever. So if anybody else has something they'd like to say.
I have a round table.
No. Who has Ralph Bales?
I got a round field.
You want to tell it?
I don't like my step. So we got done with practice. Tough practice. So we had to go up to the weight room, which was the wrestling room. And there was a scheduled meet between the blind school and Brebeuf wrestling team. So we thought we'd just sort of stand around and watch. Well, we're doing pretty well. And then the heavyweights came. And I'm watching Ralph. And I think Jim, you might remember this. Anyway, just when they lined up, this kid looked tough and rough and ready to go. This kid from the blind school. Ralph says, "Now get around the back of him and grab him."
Okay, we're gonna change the course here just a little bit. We're gonna introduce one of our integral members of the committee, Pat Healy, who's agreed to let us know, to at least acknowledge that we have lost maybe 20 different members of our class. That's gonna just sort of as a memoriam, let us know who they are.
Thanks, Pat.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm Pat Healy. Most of you probably know me because I was a massive underperformer at Buff. Massive. Plus, I was very, very young. I do have a couple of memories from Mr. Monson's speech class. One, he was late getting to class. I was scared to death of public speaking. Done a ton of it ever since, but got my start in freshman speech class. But he was late, but here he comes. And I think 4 or 5 basketball players had him up on a pallet, up high, and had him up like this, and he comes in like this. Wayne Monson coming in speech class. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Very impressed. Second, I mean, we were intimidated. Second one, and Kim, you might remember this. He was late getting to class. I was late getting to class, and Kim went to the blackboard and really taught me an awful lot about female anatomy. But I had no information. It's an education. Remember that?
No. I wish I did.
Keep the screaming on.
Yeah.
I will remind you.
Okay.
I just have one quick thing because Brebeuf was very, very kind to me, and that I got into a college that I didn't really belong with my SAT, somewhat less than 1,000, but it turned me around. But I want to thank Jim Gavin for his very, very kind allowing me to join the golf team as a senior, because that was probably a gift. I'm not in the picture actually up there. I think he took me on just because I had a car and I had a yearly golf pass to all of the municipal golf courses. It didn't cost him a cent. It allowed me to get on the golf course, to get on the golf team on my 3rd attempt. But Jim, I played 4 years Division III golf as a pre-med. That's a crazy thing to do. But I'm just so passionate about golf, and thank you so much for giving me that chance.
Yeah.
And so I'm a geriatrician, so there's probably no one in the class who signed more death certificates than I have. But it is really an honor. I want to have us all bow our heads and I'll read the list of those who have gone before us in the class of 1971. John Feeney, John Greeno, Richard Kingsley, Fred Broman, Scott Cohan, Paul Daly, Robert Garber, Steve Harding, Michael James, Mike Koss, Joe LaRosa, Ken Lupo, Michael Newberger, Mike Richardson, John Ballant, Rusty Wellhite, Doug Zwitt, Peter Reese, and Earl White, and David Zinsky. Thank you very much. Great seeing you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Back in 5 years, huh?
All right, guys, it's getting on. So the last thing I really wanted to say is, this is wonderful to be able to do this, every 5 years. There's a lot of us that still live here in town. And so as a going forward kind of thing, I know that our committee ended up being like 8 to 10 different guys, and there were others who probably would like to have joined that. So I think over the next, a couple of years, we're going to try to get together as a group, even if it's like at a local pub. I think we'll have a pretty good turnout for that as well. There's a lot of guys. This is great that Kim is zooming this, because there's probably a lot of people who haven't come to any of these, and hopefully they're watching. And the request to them would be, or the thought to them at least would be, come and join us, guys, for one of these things. There are guys that, like I was telling about Tim, I didn't know him at all at Brebeuf, which is a shame. There's probably a ton of guys in Brebeuf that I didn't know. That would be great to still keep in touch with and hang out with occasionally. So I know with our committee, Bill and Dave and Pat and everybody that put this thing together, we're going to try to keep doing these things on a much more regular basis than every 5 years. And so any of the folks that are here that we can keep in touch with, we're going to do that. And we're certainly going to try to get the guys who haven't come to many of these to get included as well. So anyway, thank you guys for coming.